Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Bob, and I wanted to share with you a presentation that we did for Sardis last week for our first Sardis Academy of October. During September and October, we are doing some work to try to determine who we are as Sardis Baptist Church and where we want to go and what we want to be and how we want to do it. So in September, we talked a little bit about our church history, and we had the ability to go into our exhibit over in the education building and see in real time a lot of the activities and topics and other things that we've done as a community since 2015. And then the following week, the staff shared a little bit about their personal call stories. This month, we want to turn more toward programmatic elements of Sardis Baptist Church, and we want to present to you our 2023 programmatic plan of ministry. And so what I want to do in this session is just kind of lay out some of our thinking as a staff. You're going to notice there are some gaps in what we show you, and that's intentional because we want your feedback. So this session is really kind of telling you what we've thought about and presenting you with some ideas. And our next session is going to be an opportunity for you to respond and hopefully for us to collectively put together a plan that we think best reflects Sardis Baptist Church. So let me see if I can share this screen. Okay, and we'll go into read mode. And so here it is. This is our Sardis 2023 plan. We're looking at the year ahead. And you'll see on the front of this is a big emoji smiley face. That's kind of intentional. Our benediction each week, we talk about the idea of our grins becoming smiles and our smiles becoming a chorus or becoming acts of love and those collective acts of love becoming a chorus of love in our community. Or excuse me, those acts of kindness becoming a collective chorus of love in our community. And so I think that's really what we're trying to be as a 2023 plan is how are we going to be that chorus of love in the world in 2023? So as we think about a plan, I think one of the things we need to know is who do we say we are so we can do the things that reflect that identity? Our website lays out an idea this way. It is quoted as saying, Sardis Baptist Church is a different kind of Baptist church, a spiritually progressive community of faith where all people are welcomed as they are. Our doors are open to everyone. Again, you can find that on our church website. And so I guess really what it's saying is we are that blue light that's out there as opposed to the regular eggs. I also wanted to share with you some generalizations of two fairly important documents. Our website houses both a church covenant and something we call the 7 promises. You all have most likely familiarized yourself with the church covenant. We say that every communion Sunday as a group. We also have the 7 promises that are listed on our website. And each time Bennett does trivia night, he stumps us with those promises that we say they are. But anyway, it's two pretty formative documents that I think shape our identity. And I've sort of broken the basic points of those two documents into 8 areas of focus that I think encapsulate who we're trying to be as a community. So very quickly, those 8 things are hospitality, worship, community outreach, prophetic witness, spiritual gift sharing, service and missions, spiritual formation, and relationships and connection. As we get started, I want to take just a moment and share some thoughts about each one of those areas so you're familiar with what they are. So hospitality, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, but we want to be that kind of community whose doors are open. We want people to come in and feel at home. One of the things we do is we call those who visit with us guests. We want them to be our guest and hopefully very quickly feel like this is a place where they can be themselves, where they can take some ownership, and where they can share their gifts with us in meaningful ways. So hospitality. Worship, again, is pretty self-explanatory, but worship is the way that we as a church corporately express praise for our Creator. Generally, we do that in our weekly worship service, but we also do that in some other ways throughout the course of the year. Community outreach is another place of emphasis for us here. In this instance, I want to distinguish community outreach as the kinds of communications we do to tell people who we are outside of the walls of Sardis Baptist Church. So it's really, what are we doing to build relationships around us, and then what are the communications that are coming out of Sardis, whether that's newsletters or other media, but to tell the story about who we are. Prophetic witness is another area of focus. Our covenant uses the phrase that we as a church intend to share the good news of God's love and salvation with the world. I think the way that I would phrase that is we seek to both publicly and privately share a word about how we see God working in the world. And so that's an area where, again, we try to tell why God matters in the world. Another one here that we list is spiritual gift sharing. And I think it's important to distinguish that idea, spiritual gift sharing. Certainly, we are grateful for anyone that shares more physical gifts of capital or financial gifts or that kind of thing. But what we really mean by spiritual gift sharing is that we seek to be that kind of community where people identify what really makes them truly unique, and then they find those places within our community that share those, that allow them to share those gifts in ways that best reflect their personality and best reflect their strengths. So I think that our lesson on the scriptures and stories that inform our faith has been really revelatory in that way. People have shared with us something that is compelling, something that grabs a hold of them, and then they've been empowered to share that in a communal way. So spiritual gift sharing. Service and missions, again, this one is fairly explanatory, but this is really what we think of more in terms of our traditional missional engagement with the world, our global missions and local missions, and how we work with various denominational partners to respond to some kind of short-term and long-term immediate needs within the community. Our spiritual formation, again, we're all on a journey of faith, and so we say that as a church, we want to provide opportunities for people to discern how God is working in their life, to approach theological study in a rigorous and relevant and intellectual way, but also to offer the kind of space where everyone can move along on that journey at their own pace and in their own space, and that we do so in a setting of mutual respect. And then finally, we want to generate relationships and connection. We are human beings at our core, and so we're interested in how we can create those kinds of relationships that offer us collaboration and mutuality and a sense of connection and purpose and belonging. So again, here are our 8 areas of focus: hospitality, worship, community outreach, prophetic witness, spiritual gift sharing, service and missions, spiritual formation, and relationships and connection. So one of the things that we thought about as we were laying out this plan is, well, let's look and see what are we doing right now in October of 2022 in a programmatic way to address these areas of focus. Now, I do want to be clear, there are things that we do other than program-wise to address each of these areas, but this conversation is really focused on specific programming to meet these needs. So hospitality, I think the most prevalent and intentional thing are our communion services. We use the table as an expression of God's radical hospitality, and it is a chance for us in a very public way to express invitation to this community. But also, I think we express our hospitality in very intentional connections with our campus partners. So whether that is our families that are involved with the preschool, our families that are involved getting lessons from Irina, or partnerships with like the wildlife stewards or the a cappella group, we're just simply trying to build connections that allow people to share our spaces and feel like they're part of the neighborhood. And then accessibility and transparency. We want the programming and the things that happen at Sardis to be accessible to people of all ages and people of all needs. And we want to be transparent. We want to be authentic in who we say we are, and we want our leadership to be accessible, and we want it to for people to always know what's happening here in a very public and collaborative way. Worship, again, I think is fairly self-explanatory, but worship includes what happens on a weekly basis. So we do, again, gather on Sunday morning in the 11 o'clock hour. We've had some chances to worship virtually. COVID gave us a chance to perfect that. And then we have special worship services too, depending on the liturgical season. In terms of community outreach, I would include our campus sharing. So we try to make Sardis a space where people can use the things as they are needed, and particularly when those things surround the public good, we want to offer the space as often as we can. And then our communications. I think our signpost, our monthly newsletter, is a way to generate an expanded community and to tell people what's happening within the walls and households of Sardis. We have weekly emails, we have social media accounts, and we have other avenues to tell people about who we are and what we do. Prophetic Witness is one that I intentionally left open. Yes, we pray regularly, we preach regularly, we do things within worship that do express, I think, within the community who we are. But I'm not necessarily sure that we have some real specific programming generated around going out as a community and collectively and corporately expressing this is who we are and why we do it, and we think these particular issues are specific to our expression of God in the world. The second set of four things, so we've got spiritual gift sharing. I mentioned it earlier, but I think the stories that inform our faith have been very pivotal. What's been wonderful is Sardis has traditionally been a congregation where lay and clergy alike share in the responsibility and expression of public worship. Our Labyrinth Partnerships have been really neat. We've had a number of groups and facilitators who've used that space. Our connection with Hope Chapel, where we go and share worship leadership and a sense of community and fellowship. And then also our relationship with churches along the Sardis Road corridor, particularly our shared Good Friday and Ash Wednesday services. Service and missions, again, that's more traditional in how we talk about things, but Goodness Groceries has been a year-long commitment to addressing local hunger needs. We have a benevolence fund that addresses needs that come up within our community. And we have denominational relationships where we support global missions, as well as things like seminaries and hospitals and formational activities and support for institutional clergy. Spiritual formation, again, we continue to try to offer different ways for people to progress along their faith journey. So we have our Sunday morning discussions, Sardis Academy, which tries to be more of an invitation into current issues. We've got worship care for our little ones, and then some elements in Sunday worship, whether it be story Sundays where we tell our youngest stories about the most important stories of faith and try to pique their curiosity and interest into ancient stories, or our canonical Sundays, where we're working our way through the 66 canonized books of the Old and New Testaments, and trying to offer people an exposure to formation in worship. Then again, I left relationships and connections blank, not from an overall standpoint, but really, again, from a more programmatic standpoint. I certainly believe that a lot of the things that we do help to facilitate relationships and connections, but I'm not sure that we have a specific program in place to say, hey, I want to build new relationships. I want to invite more people into ways to connect. So that's another place where we'll invite your feedback. As we put this plan together, there were a couple things that we wanted to keep in mind. There are resources and realities that we deal with as the current iteration of Sardis Baptist Church. So one thing that we wanted to keep in mind is staff bandwidth. We are a part-time staff. We have roughly 45 budgeted weekly hours between our 5 staff members. And currently we spend about 68% or 31 hours a week, about 2/3 of our time is focused on Sunday morning worship. We have noticed some trends post-COVID. We are seeing that in general, congregants of Sardis attend 1 to 2 Sundays a month, though it certainly can be more than that. And the bandwidth is probably there to do 1 program outside of worship per month. That would be something like participating in the Sunday discussion or choir, or coming to a Sardis Academy, or doing something off-site. And then usually 1 fellowship or social event per quarter. In terms of budget, we have a budget of approximately $175,000, which is healthy and generous. However, we would remind you that about 3/4 of that budget, or 75%, is fixed. The majority of our expenses go into retainment of personnel and upkeep of our grounds, as well as things like insurance and housekeeping and utilities. So we have a little bit of money to affect programming, but not significant amounts. I did a seminar with some clergy back in February or March of this year, and we talked about what was happening trend-wise in congregations. Specifically, what did things look like before COVID, and what did they look like in the middle of COVID? And so, in preparing for that talk, I put together a couple of charts, and this is not necessarily specific to Sardis, but I don't think it is too far off the mark. But we thought in terms of what was happening in the weekly life of congregations before 2020. So in 2018 or 2019, in a church like Sardis, or perhaps a little bigger, it would not be unrealistic to believe that you'd have a regular morning worship service and some sort of spiritual formational activity, that there'd be a choir practice and a fellowship meal and a Bible study, and that somewhere along the week small groups would be meeting, and perhaps a prayer circle as another form of small groups. Maybe there's 1 social activity per week, and there's something going on for youth and children. And if you're more robust in your missional activities, somebody's trying to do that. And then there's always administrative endeavors, whether that is maintaining the grounds, or helping to pay bills, or just doing something that helps the church run. If you look at this 8-day grid, I think I counted it up, there's like 21 blocks there. So back in 2019, which doesn't seem that long ago, and yet seems so far away, it was not unrealistic in healthy churches for active members to maybe see an active participant in your congregation as many as 15 to 20 times a week. Not that someone would necessarily come that many times, but there were that many opportunities for them to be engaged. So it would not be unrealistic to see somebody 3 to 4 times a week. And then COVID happens, and you can see there's not a lot of squares that are filled in, right? I think most churches we're able to figure out a way to meet for worship and perhaps maybe choir practice or one other thing a week. And then a lot of things either disappeared or became virtual or were put on hold or redone. And so thankfully, we are in a new stage and are not having to isolate. But I think it's important to keep in mind that that the needs of the congregation are always changing and people are pulled in different ways. And so as we think about what's ahead in 2023, we've got to be ready to meet expectations in relevant ways. As we put this plan together, we also did so on the basis of insights, kind of thinking about what we've learned from other places, what we've learned from things we've done in the past, and also just sort of hypothesizing what's ahead. And so one of the things we know is that we most likely have fewer weekly opportunities to create meaningful engagement. Another way to say that is Sunday takes on a more heightened importance. If we're only going to see people a couple times a month rather than a couple times a week, that means when we gather, that our gatherings have to be meaningful and relevant, captivating and engaging, and something that people want to invest their time in. I call this my Waffle House insight, but hash browns. We used to talk about church as being a church that gathers on Sundays or Wednesdays or other days and then scatters and goes back out into the week. Well, we can no longer assume that the scattered are covered during the week. They will be diced, chunked, and smothered by life's busyness between our gatherings. More and more things are happening in the world. It's just harder to survive post-COVID. And so we've got to be aware that there's a different level of presence, and with that comes a different expectation of presence. Worship is going to have to meet our congregants' needs in more present, provocative, and efficient ways. In other words, we got to do more than just simply gather and sit in a worship force field. Our worship has to be social. It has to be meaningful. It has to be provocative. It has to do multiple things that it didn't necessarily have to do 10 to 15 years ago. And then I think we have to be honest in how we evaluate what we're doing. And I would say that, does our current investment in formal worship and traditional programming create ROI in the most pivotal areas? And I don't mean return on investment in terms of, does it generate profits or does it generate a higher sense of a higher sense of attendance or revenue sharing, but does it generate return on those things that we've always held most pivotal to Sardis? When we have events, do they create connection? Do they create rest? Do they create joy and curiosity and faith and growth? Do they help us to identify, or do they help us to empower our spiritual gifts? I think those are questions that we need to ask. And then lastly, I would say we thought about not leading with pragmatism, but not ignoring it either. So we want to be creative. We want to be empathetic. We want to do things that are new and exciting, but we also need to be reasonable in how we think about those things. So all of that said, this is the strategy that went in to the programming grid that we're going to offer. We want to have multifunctional programming, especially in worship. So we want our events to be high quality, to do a lot of things, and to meet a lot of needs. We want our events to be low tech, high impact. What I mean by that is, and I said this on Wednesday when we gathered, we had about 15 people around the table. We had a wonderful meal. It was very casual and relaxed, but everybody was present. But why that is low tech and high impact is that it did not exhaust our resources to put that together, but we certainly got more out of it than we invested. Sometimes we have high tech events with low impact. That is, it's really deflating when people put a lot of time and energy into something, and then for whatever reason we can't get the kind of participation, and so we've not only exhausted the people that have volunteered and worked hard to put something together, but the people that attended have not gotten a lot out of it either. So again, we want to be low tech and high impact. We've talked all summer about Sabbath and about what the roots of our scriptures say about a cycle of engagement and rest and renewal. And so worship for us, at least we hope, is a form of spiritual rest. And so we want to be able to get in this pattern where we engage with one another, we do good and hard work, and then we have an opportunity to rest from that good and hard work. And that rest creates the kind of renewal that has us energized to re-engage with one another again. So it's this ongoing cycle of engagement, rest, and renewal. And we want to be aware of that. We want our activities to be intergenerational. So we want them to have a larger appeal. We want them to be entrepreneurial. By that, I mean, we want people to be able to freely identify what their gifts are and feel like they have some voice and autonomy in sharing those in ways that are meaningful. I use the term creative pragmatism, but again, let's be smart and let's be creative, but let's also not exhaust ourselves with things that are not practical or able to be implemented. And then finally, we just want to pay attention to the rhythms. How do we feel? What gives us energy? What drains us? When do we feel like we're really clicking as a church? And how can we replicate those feelings when we feel that way? And how can we step outside of ourselves and say, hey, these are the places where we're not doing the things that resonate with who we say we are and why we do them and who we want to be. So, being honest with ourselves about how we can create good rhythms. Okay, so we put this strategy together, and it really reveals itself in three particular areas. So the first area is what we call nutrient-packed Sundays. And yes, your eyes are not deceiving you. You do see an avocado on this screen. Jacqueline reminds me very often that an avocado is one of the very best things that we can have for a snack or eat for a meal, because it is high in protein, but it's also packed with all of these nutrients that are not only good for you, but will fill you up and sustain you. And it is also, I think it's a pretty healthy plant ecologically. So avocados, good. One thing that does a lot of stuff. So what might a nutrient-packed Sunday look like? Well, one thing that occurs to us is we have this wonderful endowment that allows us to bring in good speakers. And so we thought about creating a Duncan Endowment Sunday where on 3 to 4 Sundays, most likely 5th Sundays, we would invite outside speakers from our community who will come in to both preach and teach a Bible study and introduce more provocative things. And then hopefully simultaneously we can engage a small group, whether that's the Sunday discussion group or a separate group, to prepare during the quarter the speaker is going to come, to be ready to engage this speaker and enjoy that emphasis. Another thing, and this is really in response to the idea of nothing specific about prophetic witness, would be Justice Sundays. What if a couple of times a year we had a Sunday that was just dedicated to a specific social justice concern of our Sardis congregation? It could be economic justice. It could be ecological justice. It could be, it could be reproductive justice. Whatever is really, really pressing for us in a particular quarter. Story Sundays is something that we've done in the past, but something we want to continue to emphasize. And that is, again, we want to model for our children what we hope that we're modeling for the larger community. And so we want them to know the stories of our faith. We want them to have fun exploring those things. And we want to be very public and very encouraging and very intentional in how we encourage them to follow our lead. So Story Sundays would be opportunities maybe once or twice a year where we invite our littlest ones in to worship, and the focus is really on teaching them some of the important stories of our faith. We are finally back out of COVID protocols and can really be more intentional about getting back to our monthly communion Sundays. And so we want to use those monthly communion Sundays to express the hospitality of the table, but also, again, get us in that rhythm of creating a sense of community and expression of who we are. Another idea we have is Instructional Sundays. And again, that is just being more intentional in worship, of finding intervals where we remind the congregation of why we worship the way we worship. It could be prayer explanations. It could be liturgical explanations. But being intentional of saying, hey, we don't just show up on Sunday morning because this is the way we've always done it. There is thought and intentionality into the things that we do, and you're part of that. Pastoral care or congregational care or membership care, or basically taking care of one another, is something that's always been vital at Sardis. And when we have fewer opportunities to interact with one another, we have fewer opportunities to express concern and care for one another. And so one idea is to use those Sundays when we're together to be intentional about membership care, to make it a regular worship hour. So we might not have a homily on that particular day. We might just have some activities that allow us to ask the kinds of questions that are important, or to do the kind of listening that is important, to offer that care and that need and that attention and that sense of belonging that our neighbors need from one another. We've done this for a while, 10 a.m. Sundays. Sometimes we have some opportunities scattered throughout the year where it just makes more sense to be simple on a particular Sunday. We do not do this very often because we also know the importance and energy that is derived from our Sunday discussion groups. But sometimes, like the day after Christmas or the day after New Year's, we'll do some more abbreviated worship services where it's really just a matter of getting together, where there'd be a welcome and some singing and a prayer and a homily and a benediction, a chance to gather and connect, but also being mindful of that rhythm and rest that is needed to help us have meaningful engagement when we come back together. So this is another part of that Sabbath Sundays, trying to be mindful of that cycle of engagement, rest and renewal. We have noted throughout the last year that there are several Sundays that consistently are low attended Sundays. Many of those are banking holiday Sundays, and so one idea we have is to pick a couple of those. And basically, we're going to take a Sabbath Sunday. The congregation will not gather physically for staff-led worship. And on those Sundays, the staff would provide some sort of pre-recorded service that could air on Facebook Live. It'd probably be some musical component, a community prayer, and a homily, and we would make that accessible to the congregation. And then at the same time, if there are folks who are still in town and have a desire to gather, that a lay volunteer would be responsible for some kind of casual Sunday morning gathering. It might be as simple as, hey, the Sunday discussion group is getting together. It might be, hey, we're just going to have coffee and chat and get to know one another and enjoy being together during that particular hour. And then, because we know the connection element might be missing, the staff would create some kind of midweek social gathering to maintain an opportunity for connection. So an example of a place where that might happen might be 4th of July weekend or Labor Day weekend. So these are our nutrient-packed Sundays. The second thing, in addition to nutrient-packed Sundays, that we want to do is we want to have some fun. It's important. We spend a lot of time together, and God creates such a sense of joy and friendship and just energy and enthusiasm among this group of people that it is fun to express that joy in tangible ways. We also have, and Jonathan and Hillary officially ministers of youth and music, but I would also say agents of youthfulness and fun. They know how to show us a good time. And so one idea we have is taking a Sunday and doing what we call, or taking some Saturday and doing a Charlotte Fun Day, where we'll give Jonathan a stipend and he will show us how to have a good time in Charlotte without having to go too far to do it. A state park day, we might pick a Saturday or another time and choose a nearby park to explore. And not only is it the idea of getting some exercise and some time together, but also thinking about a particular spot and considering its historical, ecological, and natural themes associated with the location. In keeping with this idea of Story Sundays, we also thought about the idea of Story Saturdays, which maybe once or twice a year, maybe even once a quarter, would be an hour-long Saturday enrichment for young children, especially preschoolers. And we'd have a time of music and sharing some songs, reading books with very positive themes, particularly those that kind of break down traditional stereotypes, gender stereotypes. And then also inviting strong women to share career stories of what's happening so that our littlest ones can meet women who are doing remarkable things, be it in the field of STEM or in the field of healthcare, in the field of business or athletics or whatever it may be. And then lastly, we think it's really important for this congregation to be intentional about some time away together. And so we want to suggest a church retreat, most likely in the summer or fall, where we'd look for an off-campus and out-of-town venue to spend time in intentional discernment, reflection, and relationship building, or maybe just doing all things Sardis. So we want to have fun together. So we've talked about nutrient-packed Sundays. We've talked about having fun together. One more thing that we wanted to do, we wanted to be intentional about is offering congregational voice. Certainly worship provides that opportunity, but what can we do tangibly and programmatically out in the community to talk about our congregation's investment and voice in the world? So our idea would be what we like to call entrepreneurial missions. And the thought is that every year, really even every quarter, we'd set aside a small portion of our budgeted missions and really make these funds that are accessible to respond to contextual missional needs or contemporary missional needs. So maybe something like a hurricane happens, or maybe something, some big social issue is happening in Charlotte. Then we allow our membership, particularly those who have something close and appealing to their heart, to be leaders in that endeavor. And so these funds could be used as matching funds for an initiative, or they could be seed money to help a congregant begin or lead that project of interest, or even perhaps the daycare or other places would want to partner with us on something, and it could be a matching grant. So again, a very specific way to give the congregation voice on a regular basis. Now, we've said these new things that we want to do, but we also think it's important to remind you that we're still going to do our old favorites. So yes, we are still intending on worshiping on a weekly basis. We still want to intend on having Sardis Academy, where we have opportunities to gather for a meal and consider a contemporary topic. We still want our choir to gather. We still want our Sunday morning discussion group to meet regularly. We also think it's important to continue some community event, at least monthly. And so some of that will depend on the month, but we think at the very least, it's an opportunity for people to gather, even if it's just as simple as gathering somewhere for a meal. We'll continue to do our ongoing and denominational missions. And then as always, we want to continue to offer you as many options for communication as possible. So you'll continue to get bi-weekly emails. We'll continue to post things on social media. We'll continue to update our website, and absolutely continue to do our monthly signposts. So we've thrown a lot out at you because, quite honestly, we do an awful lot of things throughout the course of a year. But what I thought I might do is show you two ideas of a particular point of time in the year. And you can see how some of these suggestions might work together. So it's not just that we want our programming to be multifunctional, but we also want to be very smart in how we place that. And so that at any given time, we might be pursuing a particular theme, and there are a half a dozen different ways for how the congregation can engage that theme. And so everything kind of works in sync with one another, even if you can only participate in one or two of those things. So let's imagine it's the spring, maybe it's just after Easter, and what's happening. So it's the season of Easter. We're thinking about renewal, and we're thinking about spring. Earth Day happens in April, and warmer weather is beginning to sink in. So imagine a Justice Sunday where our liturgies and texts were centered on environmental justice. Imagine in that same time frame that we were able to recruit somebody for the Duncan series who had a background in ecological focus, maybe somebody like Wendell Berry. Then we want to think about what can we do as a community to reflect that concern for environmental justice. Well, that would be a great time to do the blessing of the animals. And how does our recreation or our fun fit in? Perhaps we could do the state park day. Maybe that happens, sometime in May. And then what's happening for us? What's happening for us on a missional focus? Well, perhaps we're doing something to help support the wildlife stewards, or perhaps there's some water conservation effort or other things that make sense for us missionally. A Sardis Academy could be an Earth Day celebration. And then the Sunday discussion group, again, could be either a selection by the particular speaker for the endowment series, or something that just fits with that general theme. And then even if we expanded that to the Story Saturdays for kiddos, perhaps we feature someone with a career in STEM. Maybe we know a marine biologist or somebody else that's working on conservation efforts. Here's another idea of how that might look in October. Well, what's happening in October? It's still ordinary time, which is, we know extraordinary things happen even though it's ordinary. We're going back to school. The seasons are changing to fall, so there's, the leaves are changing color. We have Halloween and cooler weather, and people are ready to be out and doing things. So maybe this time around, the Justice Sunday is focused with liturgies and texts centered on economic justice. And perhaps the Duncan Endowment Sunday features a speaker with an economic gospel focus. Perhaps it's somebody like John Crossan or Marcus Borg. The community activity could be the pumpkin carving. The fun activity might be Charlotte, and perhaps some of that is showing how you have a lot of fun on a small budget. The missional emphasis, it fits well with crop walk and food drive and other things that seek to remind us of how we can provide and give to others during the season of harvest. Sardis Academy might be a hunger simulation or some other thing that again reminds us of our abundance and the lack of abundance for others. The Sunday discussion group, again, it might be again focusing on some scholar whose bent is economic justice. And then the Saturday story might feature someone with a career in social services. So again, you see 6 to 7 different activities that are happening over the course of a month or a quarter that all work together for the same purpose, but also invite people to participate in different ways. Okay, so this is way too complicated a chart for you to look at like this, but here's what I want to say about it is this is our basic plan for 2023. And what it is a 52-week calendar or a 52-week grid. So across the top, you see the months and the days, and then that third line with the purple and the green and the white and the red is our liturgical calendar. So it lets us know what's happening throughout the worship season. And then underneath that is really more of a secular calendar, the bright yellow boxes are our banking holidays. And then as you go down on the left, it would be spreading out the different kind of nutrient-packed Sundays, as well as the fun opportunities, as well as some of the missional opportunities. And then below that, the various weekly events, whether it's choir or the Sunday school discussion or Sardis Academies or the various email communications. This is a document that we will provide for you at Sardis Academy this week, so you can look at it in larger print, and you can break it up in different ways. But really what this is trying to show you is that we can't do all 8 areas of focus in one particular day or one particular week or even one particular month. But over the course of the year, what we're hoping to do is to provide an experience where, again, each of those 8 focus areas are addressed in programmatic areas, right? We've done something specific that offers and invites you into living out that identity. It's spread out in a way that gives us a chance to work hard and engage, but also rest and renew so we can re-engage. It acknowledges that we're going to do quality over quantity. And again, it doesn't add significantly more to what we've already done. It just better redistributes and helps people see all of the things that we're trying to accomplish. And we're doing this in a very ordered and strategic way. So we're really looking forward to laying this out for you to be able to see it, to answer your questions. And I promise we'll do that in person, and we'll also have copies for those who can't be there. As we prepare for Wednesday, I want to go back to those earlier slides. So we think about here were those areas of focus, and what are we doing, and how might the new suggestions add to what was already existing. So what you see in the red are things that the new program would add in. What you see in blue is where we still need your help. So worship, we feel like the Nutrient Sundays kind of add to that. Community outreach, we feel like bringing in the Duncan Endowment speakers provide us with a shared resource for the community. For Prophetic Witness, it might be those Justice Sundays, though again, we still want to know, what do you want? How can we do that? I would say the Duncan Endowment could probably also fit under Prophetic Witness, but that's, again, an area where we want to know what you want. How can we do more that will excite you? And then again, for spiritual gift sharing, being intentional about that cycle of rest and renewal. Service and missions, inviting the congregation through entrepreneurial missions into the process. Spiritual formation, adding the Saturday element for children. And then relationships and connection. We feel like the retreat and the fun days would be a good opportunity to do that. But again, we would ask for your feedback. What can we do programmatically and intentionally to help you build relationships and connections in this community? And then finally, there are topics or questions that we would love for you to help us consider as we have our discussion next Wednesday. And we think we really want you to be smart puppies, I guess, is why we use this graphic. But one question is what is our prophetic witness? What do we want to say about God and the world, and how do we want to say it to those people around us? I think it's important to ask where do we want to be seen in Charlotte? We do a lot of cool things, but we are hidden back in the woods, and we're this kind of unknown, best kept secret type of place. And how do we want to change that? Who do we want to engage with, Sardis Baptist Church? Are there people in this community that we're not reaching, and we have a desire to go out and connect with them? I think this goes right along with what is our prophetic witness, but what do we care about? Why are we here? What it is that as community members we want to get out of the investment of our time and energy and relationships into this place? And then these two questions I think are significantly important. I want you to think about what have you been involved with at Sardis over the last year or two? And of those things, what is really giving you a sense of energy? What gets you out of bed? What makes you excited to be here? And what keeps you here? And on the other end of that, what drains you? Are there things that you've done that just you don't want to do? It doesn't make you feel good, and that's a place we want to be. We don't want to keep doing things that wear us out. We want to do things that give us energy and make us feel good and make us feel valued and excited about what's happening. And then finally, is there anything missing? Uh, what have we missed? What do you want to add into this process? So if you're still listening, if you're still here, I want to say thank you. Thank you for spending the time and energy to go through this and to listen to this. I know it's a lot. We've thrown a lot out at you, but we do a lot as this place called Sardis, and I think it's important for us to be aware of all the things that happen, and I think that helps us to know that we're not gathering loosey goosey or herky jerky as a community of faith. We're really intentional, and there is thought that goes into who we are and what we do and why we do it. And we want to invite you into that process. And I think the more that we have this discussion, the better the chances are for us to do transformative and transcendent and meaningful things. I really do believe that Sardis Baptist Church is just such a healthy and wonderful place that is primed to be an expression of God in the world. And I think the more effort and the more thought that we put into it, the more reward we're going to have in taking part in this. So again, I look forward to seeing all of you on Wednesday. For those of you who can't be here, I'm going to send a link out to this deck. I'll send a link out to the other deck for this week after our Wednesday session. Please feel free to ask me any questions. Please feel free to ask our staff any questions. We would love to engage you in any way. And again, thanks for your time and patience as we work through this. Have an awesome day.